Welcome to episode 2 of Chai Talk by Sauna. We are here with Ken Daniels today, one of the most iconic Red Wings voices and NHL voices all across the league. So welcome, Ken Daniels.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that very much.
Of course,
Thank you.
of course. So going into this 100-year season, you see it's been so historic for everybody and all the fans. What does that mean for someone like you and for the organization itself?
Well, my 29th season here, so loved every season of it. Just the history. I first met Gordie Howe at a fantasy camp in 1984. We had many dinners together, got to know Gordie very well, and my kids did. So to be able to be a part of this team and, some 13 years or so later after meeting Gordie and then see him around the room and Ted Lindsay and Alex and just the history of the franchise and Original Six. I'm from Toronto originally. So then to come to Detroit, it's fantastic to be a part of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned all these legends and these previous players that have really shaped the league to what it is today. What do you think is some of the biggest changes? Like, what do you think the biggest changes from the early 2000s to the mid 2000s, and then now going into this new era of golden era hockey now? So what do you think how's it evolved?
Well, it's evolved the speed of the game, technology, whether it be the skates, the sticks, everything. It's all about skill now from young players, and they're coming in so much younger now. I mean, the average career in the National Hockey League really is somewhere around 2 to 5 years and five stretching it.
Yeah.
When you think of how many play, whether it be 800 or 900 and how many stick, where it used to be back, I don't know, too far back, but even before I was starting to work in the National Hockey League around 1990, even before then, guys stuck around for 15 years. They came in at 20 and they're still playing at 35 and at 40. And you think, okay, you think nothing of it. Now you think a guy signing a contract at 28 and 29, boy, how many more years you're going to get out of him? In the old days, you're going to 45. Gordie played to 52. It's just the game has changed because of the speed of the game. It's almost at times too fast where so much is happening and yet not a lot is happening, if you know what I mean. But the skill today is just so much greater than it was back in the day. And even the players back in the day, I'll tell you, they couldn't match the skill level of the players today.
Sure.
What they do at the speeds they do it, worrying about getting hit pretty damn hard and to make the plays they make, skilled athletes, I can't believe they can do what they can do.
Yeah, I feel like even nowadays, you see the NHL, it's gotten so fast, but I feel like a lot of the game has lacked what these players that have played this league have been playing it for so long because they're so smart. So I feel like IQ has been such a huge part of the game, and nowadays it's like sometimes they're too fast to even think,
It is, but the IQ that they have to play at this speed is remarkable, and those who can do it well now are able to process the game at such a rate that they see it happening before it's happening. And that in the old days, the great ones could do that. Now the really young kids can see it, and that's where they stand out from the rest. They're all highly skilled, but those who can process the game very quickly. And you see how I've become American now, even though I'm dual, because I said process and not process. So I've adapted over 29 years.
So you said you're from Toronto. Do you have a special heart for the Maple Leafs, or is it, since you become a Red Wings fan, has it been the rivalry?
Yeah. I have no allegiance to the Maple Leafs anymore.
Good. We're happy to hear that.
I was fortunate, but I always say it's all about preparation, and there's no such thing as luck.
Yeah.
Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And when I began working in radio and then TV, and the opportunity came up to do Toronto Maple Leafs radio. That was my first ever game, was Toronto-Boston at Maple Leaf Gardens. I'd never called a hockey game before.
Yeah.
But my boss at the radio station said, "We need a fill-in tonight. Can you do it?" And I was working in television. I was working at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, and I said, well, yeah, I'd done the Olympics, so I'd done every sport imaginable at the Olympics, and I did a hockey game, and it went to overtime, and Andy Brickley got the game-winning goal for Boston, who I wound up working on a game with NBC and Versus with Andy Brickley. But that was the first game I ever called was in the National Hockey League. So I was fortunate to do something I've always wanted to do. So again, I was always prepared in my mind that I could do this, and I got the opportunity and took advantage of it.
Has your style changed in any way? I feel like I'm going from baseball to hockey. It's a little bit different pace, a little bit different speed. So how has it changed?
Well, the hockey itself has changed because when I was working at Hockey Night in Canada, you had time to tell stories. The out of breaks were longer. Now they're basically 20 seconds. You come out of a commercial break of 90 seconds and the referee puts his arm up, you got 20 seconds. Back in the early 90s, you'd have 45 seconds to tell the story. The shifts were longer. They weren't hurry up face-offs all the time where the ref puts his hand up, let's go. The game was just not only at the speed of the game with which the players play, but overall the telecast of the game, when the games would go 2 hours and 55 minutes, now you're done in 2:15, 2:23 without an overtime or a shootout. So just that speed is picked up too. So I think my style has changed. When I worked with Hockey Night in Canada, it used to be that the play-by-play guy was 90% and it was 10% analyst or 80-20. And then I came to Detroit and realized that Mickey Redmond was the star and I was just riding his coattails. And you came in and Mickey liked to talk more than what I was used to. And then you back off. So you adjust your style. And Mickey came from Hockey Night as well, as did I. So I had no problem adapting to how he did it. So now in terms of telling stories within the game, you have to be concise. You have to be precise. So when I go to the room, maybe morning of a game, to talk to a player and he's talking for 3 or 4 minutes and I hear something interesting there, as I'm going in my head and I'm listening to him, if there's a media scrum, how can I tell that story in 20 seconds? I know coming out of a break, I got to get it in 20 seconds. In my play-by-play style, I like to tell the stories of the player. I think we're in the emotional transportation business, where I think the closer you can bring a fan to a player that they didn't know and tell some story that, at least if I find it interesting, I hope it's interesting to others, that I can tell that story in 20 seconds. The game's so fast. You can have a defenseman behind his own net. And I think I've maybe got 10 seconds to get that story in. That puck, if it's tipped to somebody else, is in the back of the other team's net in 4.5 seconds. So, and when that happens, and I used my opportunity to tell the story and I missed it because a goal was scored, I'm pissed at myself. So to your question about style, it's always ever changing with the speed of the game and what you can do. And like players, sometimes we take chances and sometimes as a broadcaster, the chance doesn't work and sometimes it's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you brought up your dear friend there, Mickey Redmond. I think there's no secret that you guys are probably one of the most iconic duos, not even in just the NHL, but I think in broadcasting of all time. Growing up, you guys' voices have been so iconic. So there's going to be a day where I guess that has to change, and it's going to feel weird to mostly every single Red Wings fan that's ever been growing up in the early 90s. Walk me through, I guess, a little bit of how you and Mickey met and how you guys' styles have adapted with each other. Is it the same it was today? Who was always were you always the main guy? Were you always the secondary guy? Just, walk me through a little bit.
I'm always the secondary guy. It's Mickey.
Mickey.
He'll dispute that. But, we've just always hit it off. I met Mickey when I was doing Maple Leafs radio and I'd come to Joe Louis Arena for a game. So I met Mickey. And then I was in Buffalo working for Hockey Night in Canada. And it would have been the second round of the playoffs that the late, great Dave Strader, who was Mickey's broadcast partner, won before me, came into the booth in Buffalo and said, they're making a change in Detroit since Dave left. And Mickey wants you to apply. Now, I'd met him a few times. So that's how I applied for the Detroit job, because Dave told me there would be an opening. So I applied and then got the job in Detroit. And we always hit it off. We joked that the first few months, you get down to one another's cadence and when you can cut in. And again, coming from Hockey Night, I was used to the more play-by-play, but Mickey wanted to jump in with the look out here. He has no problem interrupting you. I could be in the middle of a story I thought was great, but if there's a play happening, Mickey's going, look out here. And that's okay. It gets the fans on the edge of their seats and something's happening. So it probably took us a couple of months to learn one another's cadence.
Yeah.
But after that, it just seemed seamless.
Feels organic. Yeah.
And we talk so often. I mean, we could go 4 days between a game, but in those 4 days, we'll probably talk 6 to 8 times. He'll call me when other games are on TV. Are you watching this game? Are you watching this game? Oh my God, what's this guy thinking? And so we talk all the time or during the day, or, if I need help with something at my house, have some work done. Nobody knows more people than Mickey in Michigan. So do you have a name of a guy who can do the plumbing here? And, he'll give you a name, or if not, awesome. He'll do it himself for you. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful friendship.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it shows. I think that's the one thing that really is cool about you two is that you both show that you guys are this iconic duo, but you also look like best friends. It's like you're commentating alongside one of your best friends. That's what it kind of feels like. So, and I guess between both of yours, what has been your favorite moment to call? Like, what's your favorite call of all time with Mickey alongside yourself?
People often ask me that question, and it's hard to say. I mean, there were so many great moments with Datsuk and Zetterberg, and combining with 5 seconds left in the game at the Joe against Nashville was a great moment. For some reason, I remember a game with like just over a second left at the opening night, Detroit, Los Angeles, and Steve Yzerman got the winning goal. But for all of that, I think the most favorite moment for me more recently would have been Patrick Kane's return to Chicago on Chris Chelios' sweater retirement night. And Kane got the winner in overtime, and there would have been about 6 minutes to go in the game. And I think I said at that time, wouldn't it be something if, Kane were the hero or won this game at some point? Not even thinking at that point necessarily overtime. And then they tie it up late, and Kane sets up to brink it, and then to get the winner in overtime. But for me, that moment when people say, do you actually get to take in the moment? And we should, but we don't, as we don't in life. When you are somewhere, do you take in the moment? We're in the moment now where everyone's got their cell phone out and they're trying to record everything on their phone, but you're really taking in the moment where you are. And that's tough to do sometimes. But that, when I reflect on it, that night at the UC in Chicago, when Kane got that winning goal, and you don't anticipate it, it just happens. And Kane gets the winning goal, and Mickey jumped in with the perfect, oh my God. And Kane goes to celebrate and doing his showtime, as he does. But at that moment, taking in the moment, my daughter was there because she lives in Chicago. She's a nurse at Northwestern with her then fiance and since married. And she was in the booth with me in Chicago. So when Kane got the goal, and it's Patrick Kane, in Chicago, and Mickey says, oh my God, and the story is complete of Patrick Kane's return to Chicago, I was looking right at my daughter, her being there. Yep.
That's awesome.
That meant a lot to me. And with her fiance and with actor, that was pretty cool to have that moment. And then I'm high-fiving my now son-in-law at the time. That was a neat moment that I actually took in because she was there. So that meant a lot. And we went down to the room after, and the two of them got a picture with Patrick. So that was pretty neat.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We were actually, the guys here, we were actually at that game. So just as emotional, I'm sure it was for you, being a diehard Red Wings fan. My dad came here from Iraq in 1981, actually. So nobody ever heard of hockey, right? So He got tickets to a game, went to one, fell in love with it, and ever since then, we've had season tickets since 1985. So
he introduced you to the game and just going to the games.
He introduced me to the game, and it was never anything it was always soccer for our family, and always soccer for that. So he has soccer retail stores, and when we went to Chicago to watch that game, that was probably one of the most emotional moments, like as a Red Wings fan, just being there, seeing that goal, and just not even just as a Red Wings fan, but as a fan of the game, right? Like we always grew up. Patrick Kane was a part of Chicago. He was always more rivalry. But to see that moment, I genuinely say like that was one of the coolest experiences ever.
And it was for me too. And even Patrick and I, we spoke here at Little Caesars a few days before the game. And I said, have you thought about what you're going to do when they play the video for you? Usually it's after the first TV timeout or the second TV timeout in the first period. So after the 10-minute mark. And he said, not really. And I said, you're going to do a lap, right? And he said, you think? And I said, I think you should. A full lap. And he said, I don't know. And I said, yeah, the fans here, which he knows. Yeah. But the fans are absolutely love you, for sure. So I knew when he was coming out, when they introduced him in the first period, no, the night was about Chelios for sure. But I thought he'd do a full lap of the rink. He didn't. He did up to center ice and went around in his own zone, I guess, maybe out of respect to the Hawks. Yeah. But you can see how many Chicago players grew up watching Patrick Kane. I joked with him today and I said, do you realize how many young players, including those in the Red Wings, like Axel Sandin Pellikka, the first jersey that he ever had was a Patrick Kane sweater because his father on a business trip back in Sweden got a Kane 88 from Chicago and brought it home. So Axel Sandin Pellikka's first sweater ever was a Patrick Kane sweater. And I said to Patrick today, I said, do you realize how many kids with which you're now playing grew up idolizing you? And do you realize how many players now, because you've had the hip resurfacing, older players who need their hips redone are idolizing you for what you've done? I said, you've got them coming and you got them going. So players for some were Patrick Kane's always there and on the verge of 500 goals and becoming the all-time leader, not only among American-born in assists, but points, Madonna in points and Housley in assists. It's going to be a fantastic year if you can get the triple there, all three, including 500 goals.
The greatest American-born player.
Yeah, and you know, we were also talking about it, and Mickey and I, and we have that when Patrick Kane scored his first ever shootout goal against Dominik Hasek in Chicago, and Mickey and I were fortunate enough to call that at the time, not really thinking about it. Patrick Kane being the first overall pick, and Patrick Kane got a beautiful goal against Dominik Hasek, and my call at the time was, you're seeing the future of the Chicago Blackhawks right here. At the time, you're thinking, you hope you're right, but just what you saw in Patrick Kane that early, you knew he was going to be something. Yeah. That's what lottery luck is, right?
Yeah.
Because the Red Wings have no lottery luck.
Nothing.
The Chicago Blackhawks that year in 07, Patrick Kane, the Hawks were fifth best chance to win the lottery. And they go to number one. And number two that year was James Van Riemsdyk, and now they're both Red Wings.
Oh, they got Connor Bedard. And
crazy,
Yeah, I think actually when we saw that game, I think Connor Bedard was chirping Patrick Kane a little bit or laid the body on us. We thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Thought that was exciting.
Yeah.
Even the fans there, every time we go to the United Center, it's always been, they don't like us. They don't like the Red Wings. We don't like them. It's no secret. So I guess that kind of brings me to next question is, any funny fan interactions that you've had or anything that comes to mind?
Well, the funniest to me anyway, fan interaction would have come at Pine Knob. I was at a Steely Dan concert with a friend, and a guy walks toward me and he says, did anyone ever tell you you look just like Ken Daniels? And I said, no one's ever said that to me before. And he said, seriously? No one's ever told you look just like Ken Daniels? And I said, honestly, no one's ever said that. And if timing is comedy, a guy I knew walked toward me and said, hey, Ken. The guy turned to his wife and said, see, honey, that guy thinks he looks just like Ken Daniels too. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So
he just didn't get it.
Didn't get it. So that was probably the best fan interaction.
That's funny. You should have just started doing a little play-by-play for him and be like, hey, I kind of sound like him a little bit too, no? So
but could have. People do have that before they'll hear me talking to somebody, then walk up and they turn around and they said, I know that voice, which is nice. And here in Detroit, and that's how you can tell of the fandom in this city when they're recognized by voices. And believe me, that doesn't go unnoticed. It's wonderful to know that the fans here care and they're passionate in Hockey Town.
For sure. And not even only just in hockey, but in so many other sports. I feel like we've been blessed with the sports culture in this city. I mean, if there could be one other sport, like what are you commentating on? I know you said you already did baseball, but
well, I hosted baseball.
Yeah.
And in the Olympics I did velodrome cycling and road racing cycling. I did judo, I did canoeing, I did kayaking. I did do some play-by-play off monitor for baseball. So I've sort of done all that. If there were one sport I'd like to do, and I don't know if I'd have the ability to do it, but I'd like to try it, but the studying you'd have to do would be to call the Kentucky Derby. 2 minutes in a horse race and just telling the colors and to nail that, that's an art that would be pretty cool to call.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as exciting as too, especially getting down to the last seconds as hockey. You kind of have to have that speed, and every second something can change. So.
And you can't screw it up. It's the last moment, and you can have a photo finish, but that would be pretty neat to do. I know they had asked me to do basketball in the Olympics when I was working for CBC, and I didn't really know the game well enough at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 5'7". It wasn't like I was dunking a basketball. So, and the Raptors weren't into being yet. So I didn't do that. But what I did call when they said, okay, if you can't do basketball, we need someone over at tennis. So I said, okay, I can handle tennis. And when tennis first came into the Olympics, and I called Chris Everett's first ever tennis match against an Italian woman at the time. They weren't coming to me live, but our position at CBC Television was right behind NBC and Bud Collins. So they weren't coming to me live, but Bud Collins was calling it live for NBC. So everything Bud was talking about with his analysts for tennis, I'm sitting right behind him taking notes. So when they came to me, I sounded like an aficionado at tennis, which leads you to say, it's not what you know, it's who you sit behind. Because when I got back, my executive producer, Bob Moyer, said to me, for a guy who didn't know anything about tennis, you sure pulled that one off, which is key. Mike Babcock told me years later, we're in the R&D business, not research and development, rob and do. So know what you can, use it as your own. So it was, that was a neat moment for me, being as nervous as I was, calling the Olympics, you're calling tennis, Chris Everett, and then we went down courtside after and I got a picture with Chris. So that was a cool moment for me as a young broadcaster coming along in 1988 in Seoul.
Wow, it's exciting. And you've been doing the Red Wings since what, 97?
97.
97, yeah. How challenging does it get to, when, I know you were talking about all these other sports and all these other countries and everything, how challenging does it get to understand names? Has there ever been anything on the fly, or are you just pretty good at pronouncing every single name at this point?
You can do a double take sometimes, but that's where preparation comes in.
Yeah.
And I do, and you watch other games and you talk to the other announcers and, you know, and I get the players' names on tape. Like we have Albert Johansson and he's European and some will say Johansson. So I go to Albert and I'll have it on my phone. How do you want your name said? And he says, Johansson. I said, Albert Johansson. He said, correct. Same as Jonathan Berggren. How do you want your name said? We have Elmer Soderblom.
Yeah.
We say Soderblom. And his brothers in Chicago, and they say Soderblom. Well, I say they're wrong because I've got Elmer saying it to me on tape, and we got Elmer's mother in Grand Rapids. Our guys there said we're saying it correctly. And I said, I told the guys in Chicago, it's Soderblom. It's Soderblom. So, you know, everybody will do their own thing, but you all do your own homework. And with a lot of the European names, I don't know if anyone give me pause necessarily, but, you know, you learn them. I write everything out phonetically, so you get the name right. To me, that's the one thing that matters. And you'll go up to some players and you'll say, how do you say your name? And they go, I don't care. Like it could be Jacob or it's Jakob.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you should care because your parents care, your father cares, it's his name. How would he want it said? And sometimes you try to Americanize it from over there. And I said,
Sure.
Are you okay with it that way? So it's just a way to get to know the guys too. And then the conversation to lead in other ways. And all of a sudden you'll get a story about a guy growing up, or, you know, a story you want to tell to the fans. So it's all about studying. I didn't do a whole lot of it in school. I knew what I wanted to do. So you make up for it here. So, you know, you go to the rink every day and I get to watch hockey. I'd be coming to the game anyway, even if I weren't calling it, or I'd be watching it. So to do what I do for a living is a blessing, and I don't take that for granted.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And I mean, you hear stories. I've always been a big fan of broadcasting. We have this virtual NHL league, and I always broadcast the games just for fun. And I've
Were any good?
I'd like to say that I branch myself as the most electric.
There you go.
So, you know, it doesn't have to be good, but it's electric. You know, we
remember though, when you're electric, you got to, there is a way to, I'll tell you this, and you can get back to your question, that when I was calling the Olympics and canoeing and kayaking, and my boss, Alan Davis, who gave me the opportunity to do Maple Leafs radio, and he was my boss at the radio station at the time, even though I was working in TV, and I came back after and he said, you know what your problem was? I said, what's that? He said, you hit the ceiling when they just started out of the gates for the canoeing, and it was 5,000 meters or whatever it was. You can't start here. You have nowhere to go to hit the ceiling. So what happens early in the first period isn't going to be as exciting, or at least give yourself room to move for the third period, right?
Sure.
So you can be electric, which is true. And I learned that in 88, and I said, holy cow, you're right. I listened back to it and I was so revved up. But that's learning as you go along, and learning the business. So
pick and choose.
Yeah, like that's what when you said that. But you were probably pretty good.
I'll send you some clips after.
Please
you
do.
can give me
I'll
some judging here. I know the stories of Doc Emmerich when he was going to high school games and just sitting there with his camcorder. When you started growing up, how did you perfect your craft? Or how did you know it was even?
I don't know if I
ready
perfected it yet. You know, you say you strive for a perfect game, and I've never had one.
Yeah.
And probably every broadcaster will tell you that. I started when I was 8 years old, watching in our family den the Maple Leafs playing, and when my parents, you know, the game would come on, believe it or not, at the end of the first period. They didn't even carry it live back then. in the late 60s.
Yeah.
So watching the Maple Leafs, and then I just started calling the games, and maybe my parents or my older siblings sent me to bed because I was screwing up Dave Keon and Red Kelly. I don't know. I was mixing up 14 and 4. I don't know. But and then I would take my yellow, which I still have, my yellow Panasonic Twist radio, and I'd put it underneath my pillow, and I'd pick up KMOX out of St. Louis 1120 and the great voice of Dan Kelly. And the Blues obviously came in with 5 other teams in 1967. And I'd fall asleep listening to Dan Kelly, or if the Leafs were on the West Coast, I'd fall asleep listening to Foster Hewitt, called Toronto Maple Leafs Radio. Foster was the original, he shoots, he scores. That was Foster Hewitt. So when I tell people I literally dream my job, I did. I'd fall asleep listening to hockey games because it would get late. My parents wouldn't know I had the radio underneath my pillow. So to me, that's how I basically prepared for it, and always wanted to host Hockey Night in Canada. Grew up watching Ward Cornell and then Dave Hodge, and then ended up working with Ron McLean, who hosted. That was really my goal, was, not only be on TV, but to host Hockey Night.
Sure.
And I guess when I played street hockey, I'd be doing play-by-play. I'd played goal in street hockey, and I was Bernie Perrant, whom we just lost. He was my idol growing up, or Bobby Orr when you were playing out. And I'd probably call the games in my head or do it. And my family always thought I'd be doing play-by-play. And then in high school, I was playing for the high school hockey team. My coach was Mike Keenan, who went on to become one of the winningest NHL coaches of all time, coached the New York Rangers to their cup in 1994, ending the lengthy streak that they had of 40-plus years. So I would do the school announcements. I'd play for the hockey team. I'd go home on a typewriter. Do you know what a typewriter is?
It's the mechanical one, right?
I wish I kept my Underwood typewriter, and I didn't, but that's how I typed out all my essays. And I'd go home, and after our high school hockey game, whether I scored or I didn't, I'd write up the announcements, and I'd do a sportscast over the school system.
So you knew early on.
Yeah, I knew early, and they gave me the opportunity to do that over the speaker system in the school and all the classrooms, and I'd bring them a sports update.
Yeah.
And that's how I basically knew that I wanted to do radio. And, grew up watching Brian Williams on television, and Brian Williams in Canada was a sportscaster, age 17. I wrote him a letter, and I said, can I come down and watch you do the sports? And he did. He had me come down to CBC TV, watch him do the sportscast, and some 8 years later, I replaced him at CBC Television because he went to network, and I replaced him at local sports. So, you know what? If you don't ask, you don't know. And that's what I tell kids. Worst someone can do is say no. But if you have a passion, like you have a passion for Sana and the business you've done, namesake, and you made it something great. So if you have a passion for something, you make it happen.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I got about one last question here, and then we'll kind of wrap up. But all-time favorite Red Wing. If you could pick one player you're sitting down having dinner with, who's your all-time favorite Red Wing?
Well, there's so many. I'm looking at Nick Lidstrom's sweater right over there. That would be one, and I got to host his retirement night when a sweater went up to the Raptors at Joe Louis, so he'd be one. But for me, he amazed me every night, was Pavel Datsyuk. I just loved Datsyuk, and when I first watched him, and just the alliteration for the Datsyukian Deke, it came to me one day, and I thought, I can't overuse it, but I could have used it 5 times a night. I tried to use it maybe 5 times a season. But Pavel was just amazing to me to watch. I grew up watching Bobby Orr and Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
And as great as they were, and Yzerman and Fedorov and all the rest. But I couldn't wait for Pavel Datsyuk to come back over the boards and something was going to happen.
Yep.
I know the opposing players couldn't wait for Pavel to sit on the bench so that nothing would happen. When he turned people inside out, and I'd hear that Mickey. Couture in San Jose, and just Mickey's laughter of it, no disrespect to someone else. Mickey knew it could happen to him too.
Sure.
But what Pavel could do and turn a player inside out and things that I'd never seen before. When you get players like Yzerman and Fedorov and Brett Hull thinking, and Brendan Shanahan, I'd never seen that before.
Yeah,
he did it.
Absolutely.
That's when you know he's one of the great ones.
My entire life, I remember it was actually a really cool moment with Datsyuk. My dad had an open heart surgery in high school, and Datsyuk came and visited him in the hospital. Nice. And they became friends because he was always a big soccer fan. So my whole life I was always chasing autographs, and I made a stick saying, Datsyuk, it's my birthday. Can you please give me your stick? And he pulled over the car Didn't talk to anybody else that day. Chris Chelios came out and pulled 5 sticks out, gave me a stick. Draper came out, gave me a stick, and then Datsuk said, "I don't have the stick with me. I'll give it to you next time." Next time I couldn't wait and went to his car after, they used to come out of the Joe towards that tunnel.
Yeah.
He remembered me, gave me a stick and said, "Here, like this one's for you." So I still have that. So my whole life I was chasing autographs and sticks by Pavel Datsuk. We ended up meeting him when he first came back. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah,
Just
6 months to a year. Yeah.
We met up with him to give him some more soccer jerseys. All he could ask for was a Messi jersey. And the coolest moment, I'll say full circle, this whole company was, like I said, I was chasing autographs from Datsuk my whole life. I gave him a puck, the Sana one. He collects them. And before he even walked out, he was like, "Hey, can you sign it?"
No.
So I signed the puck for Datsuk. I explained to him the brand. And that was just like a really cool full circle moment of somebody who I idolized forever and then asked me for a signature of like, "Hey, this is a cool puck. I'll take it. Like, can I have it? And then can you also sign it for me?" So that was
very neat.
That was something really, really cool. Especially being in the hockey fandom, I think it was really awesome. But
Oh, you got me. See all the goals that I call for Pavel. He never asked for my autograph.
we'll make sure, Paulo, if you're watching this one day,
come on, Pav.
we also have one little debate we want to solve here. So Tuesday night, Troy League, me and these guys, we play. It happened to be 30 seconds left in overtime. And this is the scenario. I'm the guy loaded up for a one-timer. This man in the red on the left, he's actually the one who has the puck. A lot of backstory, but you can play in the bottom right, and I want to understand what you would do in this scenario, and if this was the right play. You can solve a little issue for us.
Well, that's a bad angle shot.
It's a bad angle shot.
What the hell?
That's a better breakout pass than it is a shot.
Seriously.
So I'm loaded up for the one-timer.
Yeah.
15 seconds left. That's a walk-off.
That's vision
Slap shot.
peripherally.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
Should have caught you in there. That was a bad
If I hit that, that's the equivalent to the Patrick Kane in Chicago.
Yeah. That wasn't good.
Well, guys, this has been one of the most amazing segments we've had. We can't thank Ken Daniels enough. Thank you guys again. Catch us on the next episode. And Ken Daniels, if you want to sign us off.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with Sana. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks, guys.